the festive season in full swing and Christmas just a day away, many of us get trigger happy around the season and urge to shower ourselves and family as well as relatives with all kinds of foods and gifts, and food comes so easily. But with the cost of living having drastically increased and affordability for many quite limited, having to enjoy ourselves on a tight budget can be quite difficult, especially if your next paycheck is a little more than a month away. Now let's get some tips on how to stretch that festive season budget with SA Savings Institute CEO Gerald Mwandiambira. Mr. Mwandiambira, thank you so much for joining us this morning. So what is it about the silly season that has people overspending so much?
Look, I don't think it's necessarily a silly season of overspending, but I think it's the jovial spirit and the fact that many people are celebrating making it through the year. People tend to be exuberant and spend more than they would normally spend. But the reality is that 2022 has been a year unlike many. We've had to survive 12 months or 11 months income, because a month's income represents 8.25% of our annual income, and most prices have gone up by more than 8%. So we need to be very careful this year in how we spend over this festive period. And there are a number of ways in which we can start saving a bit during this period. And the first one probably is bring and share, as opposed to you being the big host, welcoming your family and friends. Tell everybody to bring something: salads, desserts, meat, whatever you're sharing will go a long way in reducing your expenses over this holiday period. And I know today is Christmas Eve, but you can also save on presents. As opposed to buying expensive presents for all your family, try and have a budget cap for each person you're buying a present, and also tell them the same thing so that you don't have a situation where, your expectations are met or not met because someone didn't know that you're not going to spend that much on them.
I want us to unpack some of the tips a little later on, but I want to also just understand sort of the spending patterns of South Africans. How would you define our relationship with money? Are we quite a frugal nation or not?
No, I think South Africans in general, especially the previously disadvantaged groups, are big spenders. And it's obviously a psychological overhang from, the years of apartheid, etc., in terms of us wanting to enjoy the good life. And I think we are still having that same mindset where we are a nation of spenders. Saving is not really our thing. We are living for the moment. And this has been made worse probably by the youth, the Generation Zs and beyond, who are living for an Instagram picture. So they really live for the moment. They don't care about tomorrow. They'd rather look good today and simply enjoy the moment. The older generations still have a culture of saving, but unfortunately it doesn't seem to be crossing over to the younger generation, which lives more on an instant life culture.
So what would you say is the average spend of South Africans over the Christmas period?
Look, I don't think you can have an average spend as a number, but probably as a percentage of your salary, I've seen people spend 50 to 60% of their December income on having fun for Christmas. And that normally becomes a problem because in exactly 6 days' time, January will be knocking on the door. And suddenly we move from a mood of happiness and, yes, life is good, to facing reality on New Year's Eve, when suddenly, the mood drops drastically by the time we reach January 2.
And when there's only just cabbage and water in the fridge, that reality certainly sets in. Speaking of that reality, how often or how far does that impact then go into the next year when you've spent so much in just 1 month, and then it just suddenly has a ripple effect on everything else for the next 6 to 7 months to come?
Look, for some people, it's going to have a long-term impact, especially if you're spending a credit card over this festive period. Remember, a credit card, if you're going to go into next year paying the minimum payment, you're going to be paying it for a long time, probably deep into next year or even into 2024. So the advice is really do not spend what you cannot spare, and where possible, avoid your credit card or any debt spending at this time, simply because the interest rate cycle is still on the upward trajectory, and the cost of living will probably get a bit harder before things start settling down, hopefully in the second half of 2023. So I'll call 2023, make it your 20 debt-free, a year in which you're focusing on fixing your finances, getting the help you need, and really living a life which makes you happy. And happiness is really about your personal economy, and most people don't have a personal economy. They look at their neighbors and they simply want to copy.
I like that. 2023, make it your 20 debt-free. Now, going back to those tips, what would you say is the general rule of thumb? I mean, you mentioned earlier on that you need to have a cap when it comes to gifts. What are the other general rules that you would apply, especially during this time of the year? There's clothes, there's food, there's gifts. There's so much that we spend on.
Transport is a big one. Be careful of where you're traveling to, the roads, do not speed. Believe it or not, speeding tickets can become quite a big cost in 2023 if you don't actually obey the rules of the road. So whilst you're visiting your family and your friends, still drive slow and take your time. And, you know, the three questions you should ask before you spend any money from today right into next year is, do I really need it? Can I do without it? And if I don't get it, will anyone care? And most purchases from today until January, you'll probably be able to answer, I don't need it. No one cares if I get it or not. I can do without it. And practice saying a 2-letter word during this festive period. It's called N-O. No. You know, because they know that you're the one who comes out on TV. They're going to come for you, and then you simply say no. And you don't have to justify your no. I think one of the things which we go through is emotional blackmail under black tax. You know, if you can't afford to, if it's not part of the budget, start practicing the word no. Once your family and friends have heard you say it a few times, they'll be shocked to death. But after they know you're Mr. or Mrs. No, they move on to the next target. And
they get used to it. But it's very difficult to say no during this time of the year, Mr. Gerald. I mean, rushing to that braai in order to make sure that you reach there before the meat is finished, and coming there with drinks and other presents and other things to make other people happy makes it a bit difficult, doesn't it?
No, it does make it difficult. And I think one of the other ways you can save is use the specials. Every supermarket, when you walk in at this time of the year, they've got a pamphlet which lists the discounted products. If you really must spend, make sure that you only buy things that are on the discounted product list, or they are sale items, or they are items which you definitely are getting value for by buying in bulk. Do not buy anything that's not discounted at this time. And also just bear in mind that stationery and school uniform, you know, pops up. From Boxing Day, they're going to pull down all the Christmas decorations, and suddenly you've got papers and pens. So reality is around the corner in terms of saying, yes, we do want to have a festive season, a mood of giving thanks and also honoring the time of the year in terms of it being a religious time when we're honoring the birth of Christ. But at the same time, doesn't mean blow the budget and actually put yourself on the back foot as you enter into 20 debt-free.
How important is it to create maybe some systems?
Let's use this time to discuss stokvels amongst our families and friends and ways of which you can save for yourself. I think you spoke nicely in saying that 2-liter bottle, envelope, whatever works for you. I think saving is a highly personal decision because it involves sacrifice, commitment, and discipline. Do what works for you, boo. So don't necessarily do what everyone else is doing. If a 2-liter bottle can keep you out of mischief by saving coins, do that. If you can use an envelope, do that. If you can use automated savings by transferring money to another account which you can't access easily, do that. If you want a tax-free savings account, do that. But most important, let's start establishing our own personal economies. What I tend to find when I speak to most people is they cannot define their personal economy because they've never looked at how much their income and expenses are. They don't budget. They simply get on by. And I think, start small. Don't feel guilty, but, start saving, yes, by those 5 rand coins, because savings is an experience. And once you've had that good experience of saying, I had a good Christmas, I had a good Black Friday because I prepared for it, you simply cut and paste and repeat.
All right. Thank you so much for those wise words and tips. And we certainly are looking forward to 2020 debt-free. That was SA Savings Institute CEO, Mr. Gerald Mwandiambira. Thank you so much for joining us now.